Okay, today we are in Melbourne, Australia, and this is Andrew Stockwell. Of course, you guys know me. I'm Dan. I'm the CEO and the founder of JX Design. So, Andrew is actually my mentor, and he's been coaching me and teaching me how to do pretty much everything professionally as well as personally. He's always been like a confidant to me. So today, since I'm visiting Melbourne, Australia, so we decided to do the podcast in Melbourne at Andrew's this beautiful house. And the focus today is going to be artificial intelligence and use experience. Just to give a little intro for Andrew, he's been in the industry for the last 25 years. And he's been working across the globe with experience design to technology, emerging technologies, and digital transformation. And I can't be any happier than today to talk about the industry changes and what is happening within AI as well as UX user experience today, other than Andrew Stockwell. Andrew, welcome to our podcast.
That's a very nice welcome. Thank you very much, Dan.
You're welcome.
I think what Danja really means is I'm a romantic dyed in the wool, and I have a taste for history and how we have designed so many things over and over again. So Danja, we want to talk about experience design, UX design, and artificial intelligence. Yeah. Well, I've heard this song before. That's what I have to say. So the things I really wanted to touch on with you are the bad old days of consulting, where we sold a method, and that's not that long ago, only 10 years ago. Deloitte, ThoughtWorks, anyone, the first thing we do is come into a company and say, we can change you, which is about transformation, right? Mm-hmm. And there are great examples here in Australia, like the Digital Transformation Agency, that took over a lot of the whole government stuff. And they sincerely want to transform the organization. But on the other end of the stick, we're going to come in, let's say I'm going to get in trouble for this, National Australia Bank, and we're going to do the NAB Labs. So they found $1 million to get Deloitte in. And what happened? We came in, we showed them how to do what we did, and we sold them on the Double Diamond, or Stanford, if you like. We showed them the methodology, and we taught them how to do what we did. And we said, you'll be fine, you're saving money, you don't need us anymore. Mm. What really happened was they discovered that you can't replace a designer of 10 years with a lot of insights and a lot of experience, and all they got was output. They did a customer experience journey. They did a service design blueprint. They did their personas, and then they thought, well, we should do jobs to be done too. But what they got was output, but not insight. And then they created that. And this is the sort of story that we're talking again. Can we plug in artificial intelligence to do design? No. Can we take the boring parts away? Like, how many times has someone said, I really want to do user experience, but it takes too long?
That's a common phrase that we always hear.
Right. But they want quality design, but they want it faster. Now, here's the thing. If we could do the heavy lifting, like write me interview scripts, well characterized for this target audience, and presto. Yeah, I still don't believe that AI or large language models can actually analyze qualitative data, so I don't trust them. But it's almost like autopilot. You only trust autopilot once it's proved itself regularly to work. We can't even do a self-driving car, but we can plug AI into qualitative research and get answers. If it does work, that'd be great. But you still need a designer to make the decisions and say, but what if? And there's a magic phrase. What if we went back to how people chose paint colors in the Victorian era? Because they used to use a paper fan, and they put the colors on each one, and then you could have a paper fan, and you would take it into your house, and this is really edgy for the time, and you would look at all the different colors and choose one to complement your furniture or the structure of the house. And they got that from the 1700s, when you had a paper fan to mark all of the palette possibilities in painting. So they bounced forward, and yet we say, oh, the best way to choose a color is a disk, like Photoshop, which means nothing, or a grid. So how many things have actually happened before and before and before, and yet, because we reward new behavior, we always seek to do something in a new way, even though it's a well-experienced problem. AI is a functionary tool. I may have drifted in my points, but that is my ilk.
I think you're on the point. On AI is a buzzword that everyone's jumped on the bandwagon to have a conversation. But when you really think about it, artificial intelligence is another new way of working to increase the efficiency and productivity. I think you mentioned that, was it early today, you mentioned that, it's to carry the heavy workload.
Heavy load.
Yeah.
And I think we've had very similar slots in experience, like, is it going to replace my job? The gray goo is a great example that programmers used to talk about all the time. Nanotechnology is going to get out of control, and it's going to make, I don't know, a widget. But the widget, we can't turn it off, and it will just mine the entire Earth until it's just endless widgets drifting in space, and that will be the end of humanity. And that really was a fear in 2004. And then you talk to a nanotechnologist who says, do you know how hard it is to get one rod to connect to another rod in nanotech? We can barely do that now. Trust me, there's nothing to worry about. And what artificial intelligence does is it occludes much more significant problems. For example, like in the Victorian era, people were worried about what steam engines would do and how they'd change their lives. But meanwhile, their wallpaper is full of arsenic, and it's quietly killing them. The real danger with artificial intelligence is about access. So we live in a freemium model, and unfortunately, we've become attuned to it. So social media cannot exist if we don't feed it.
Yeah.
And there's a lesson to be learned in there.
Absolutely.
So if you don't tell it what you had for breakfast and what your wedding was like and how happy you are, but more importantly, who your friends are and what timeline of events occurred, it just wouldn't exist. ChatGPT and all other large language models, because they're not artificial intelligence, they're just large language models, cannot exist if we don't engage with them. Right now, they are juveniles. We could kill them in the crib. If everyone said, I won't use it, right now, there would literally not be any of it. But the investment and the usefulness of it, it's like a different kind of hammer.
Yeah.
At what point is there any guarantee that ChatGPT won't cost $20,000 a month, or a week, or a day? There is a great rush towards the use of the tool and absolute no protection about, well, what happens when they finally start charging? Because if you're not paying for it, you're the product. In this version, we are the minions that create the desire to use it to replace our jobs and say, no, it's a really imperative tool. It's like the ultimate revenge of Adobe. You can no longer steal my software and pirate it because you need access to it. And so the real problem, the real danger is almost Victorian again, where we create something that suddenly is so important, like a combustion engine or a steam engine. And then it's about capital, whether you can access it. So if you don't have the money for a subscription to use it, this integral thing, well, then you're on the outside. Well, this is like the United States when they had the great railroads building. So there's someone with a lot of money that gets a contract with the government to use our tool with money to build railroads. And the rest of us who don't have money, we are literally building the railroad, and guess how much they pay us? A Victorian factory is the same. There's someone with a lot of money who has a factory and an idea and a guidebook, and they make decisions because they can afford to ask ChatGPT. And everyone else is feeding dangerous machines and hoping they don't get their hands torn off. And that was the Victoria era. That was literally what happened with the introduction of steam. How is this any different?
Yes, I think we are just going on cycles of technology and also changing human behavior as well. See, one of the things that recently that came to conversation with me is that the generational change. So if you take about, like, let's say 16 to 25-year-olds, then, or 26-year-olds, then you're taking from then 25 to 35 and so on and so forth. But then you go with this Gen Zs, Gen Xs. Yeah.
Which is an inherited language from a newspaper, not even a newspaper article, a Rolling Stone article in 1994 said Gen X. And yet we keep using the language. And I'm sorry, it just kind of proves your point.
Yeah, it is. And the conversation is related to that, as well as saying, is it because of the younger generation they were born with technology, and they were born with certain tools, and they are hooked onto it. And the older you are, you're less savvy with some of these technologies coming out. And is it because, I mean, the ChatGPT, for example, any AI tool, ChatGPT, Jasper, there's so many out there now. Yeah, it's a bard. So the reason that it's the buzzword as well as the conversation these days, because younger generation is always on technology and they're using it, so there's a demand to it, right? So if you take you and I, for example, much older generation than that, and we were like, yeah, we can use it, but where is the human element to it? Are we really think of the user experience, human-centered design, and that element to it? So this is a debate as well as a like some kind of an insight that coming out from people. They don't know which way to go. And do you think that, like, because of younger generation, user experience is going to be on the path to slow death?
You remind me of a few things there.
Yeah.
But yes.
Okay.
How's that? Because it's a 50% answer. It's either yes or no, or something in between.
In between, yes.
So you remind me of the French philosopher Lacan said the function of a machine is a function of a desire. And every machine that we have is that. It's just our machines have become so much more sophisticated that we are somewhat occluded by them. So they used to call it digital native, which is a really tacky term. And here's a great irony that old people describe what young people are thinking, even though they're so out of it. It's almost like New Music Express, which people in bands call the NME, and they're quite right about it. So old people describing what young people think immediately takes us back generations and generations, like Rebel Without a Cause. What are you fighting? What are you rebelling against? What if you go on? But to be born into the internet, the grown-up version of the internet, not the romantic one, the big grown-up one that really does know what you're doing, and facial recognition, serious things have happened. There are no public spaces anymore. Everyone up until this generation could catch up with friends, skate park, outside McDonald's, the Rotunda, whatever. there was somewhere to go without spending money.
Mm.
That doesn't exist anymore. You're either on camera and moved along, or you're in space expected to spend money. We are in a society that Instagram is particularly problematic for, which trains people to photograph and digitize themselves before they can make decisions about whether they want to be on a record.
Mm.
And that should be absolutely fucking illegal to start with. And then these people are handed a set of tools saying, this is what a job is. But you can't have any job security. You're a gig worker. And turn the cogs to create a digital landscape, because we all need you to do that. Otherwise, we won't make the billions we need. At any point, the Luddites are a great example. They just rejected technology, and it was incredibly stupid, but they just wanted to cut it off and see what happens if you don't take part. And they're not fondly remembered in history. In June, the movie that you've probably seen, they do the prehistory of June. There is a great Butlerian revolt about everyone's used machines for so long to automate and do things that people no longer are capable. And the Butlerian revolt actually destroys all the machines. And there is a 2,000-year battle between artificial intelligences, which is why in June, the mentats, everything is humanized. People train to their abilities. The mentats can calculate anything. The warriors have these incredible skills because they don't use technology, which you'll notice in the film. But we just assumed you're born, here is this, the equivalent of the discovery of an atom bomb. Digitize everything. This is the new version of working in the mines, mining for pixels, or mining for what you're told to find in insights. Where is the revolt? Where do people say, I don't really want to do that. I want to be a furniture maker.
I mean, that brought a question. I wanted to kind of bring you back into the whole methodology of human-centered design, or I would say user experience in particular. Empathy map. We were talking about empathy maps, and I think we've always talked about empathy map. So when it comes to empathy maps, we always think it's about what people see, what people think, how they
what they hear, what they're doing.
So
they do a sensory categorization.
Correct. So the whole senses to be think about. I mean, you need to think about the sensory effect on a user or a person before you design a solution for them. I mean, that was the purpose of it. Yes. So when it comes to AI, remember I was asking you before, like, do you think that AI still, even though AI is going to take over a lot of things, again, taking the heavy load, right? But do you think that we still need to design solution within even AI tools, right? Do we still need to design with empathy map intact? Or you think that empathy map might not needed in the future?
I saw an interesting article the other day, and it related to, we used to do web pages, HTML, CSS, and we'd handwrite it, and our clients would go, wow, I love it. I barely understand it. I've got a venture capital here. And then we got templates. And templates made life a lot easier. And then we got very sophisticated templates that wrapped into themselves like Squarespace, where you can literally work through it efficiently, almost like a piece of software in itself assisting you. And you can hand it to your clients and create access. And then they can be in charge of it instead of needing you. And then AI turns up saying, I could probably do that for you, but it's not that easy. You know, like, you really need to find a way to talk to me. And then I still think there's a bit more with the parameters. I think, are you asking me, will we be able to make an empathy engine? which is a very
Mm.
philosophical question.
Mm.
Is it possible to make an empathy engine to plug in what essentially is a character? To plug a character into a service and say, look after this character. It would be a marketer's wet dream, to be honest. I think this touches on Immanuel Kant to some extent. So to get super philosophical on you. So Immanuel Kant is a German philosopher, and his main proposition is to never answer your question. That's the big one, which is why you get him in second year philosophy. And he asks, is it possible for a human being to do something because it is actually purely good? Or do they do it out of self-interest? And then he lists about 196 test cases where he says self-interest. Feels good, self-interest. So and then he leaves the question open. But it's, having read it, yes, it is possible to do purely good acts, but in engaging in one's own behavior, most of the time it's not, and then every now and then there's one that shines. And that's the one that he didn't put in the book, quite deliberately. And he wrote many other ones too. This is the same question. Is it possible to plug an identity into a service and say, look after this person? Is it possible to encapsulate the soul? Isn't that what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes very philosophical on talking about it. I'll bring you back into more again.
Well, you need to.
Yes, because I mean that's the thing.
Who wants a boring guest?
There's another part to that empathy map, also methodology. Again, going back to the human-centered, the double diamond, and we practice.
If we use a method, we'll get an output.
Exactly. So the question goes again towards machine learning and generative AI, right?
Yep.
Now, machine
when you
learning.
say generative AI, you actually mean adversarial
Yes.
AI.
Yes.
Right.
So those two terminologies are that's again the buzzwords or the conversation that you always have when you go out in a tech forum or a kind of like a event. And like, what is machine learning and what is generative AI? And people are always like.
So tell me about the desperate need for common language. Because of the BBC started the Common Experience Language, or General Experience Language they called GEL. And what they wanted was everyone to actually be able to understand, not necessarily do, but understand, and then we could all work together. But that really gets in the way of selling something, Dan.
Yeah, it is.
If I want to sell something, here's how I do it. In my best Dan Draper process, I will take something out of the 70s, like literally rip it out, like a fish diagram and some information architecture, and then I'll wrap it up in a new phrase, and you see you need widget 2.0, even though it's not a new thing at all. Keeping clients in the dark and saying, you're doing great, but what you need is actually what your LinkedIn feed and is Fast Company. It's a bit of Fast Company. Just take something that exists and wrap it up to make it a new product. As Dan Draper said in Mad Men, the general technique is you create an itch and then you slide your product just right in there to solve the itch. But where we really are with experience design and I think service design, like service design sounds like a new thing, but it was called system design before. And it existed in the 70s. That's how we put people on the moon. It's not a new field.
Yeah.
Brain kicking in. There we go. The common language allows us to work with other people about what is machine learning, what is adversarial AI. Well, it's about a machine that creates a series of questions and another machine that interrogates it and creates a final resolution.
So, to your point, I think people have this fear of the machine learning and generative AI. Again, like you said, there's one machine is asking question, the other one's to feed it and then come up with a resolution as a put out, as output.
Which would be great if it was doing a cure for cancer. Which it is, and that's the whole point. Like, if it serves us, it's fantastic. If it's scraping every artist you've heard of, and every artist you might have heard of, and that's as deep as it goes. Not all the interesting artists you haven't heard of, because we don't talk about them. You know, like Maleb and Auerbach, or those ones. It doesn't. So it's a very shallow depth, and then it argues with itself, and it spits out. Oh, you've seen the terrible things you get with generative AI. Like, it's a Leonardo da Vinci painting, but it's got cucumbers in the front and a flying. And it's shallow and cliched and not very deep. There was a great argument when computers were getting really good and engaging to robotics about, oh, this is the death of the painter. Not just death of the artist, but death of the painter, because a machine could make a painting like Da Vinci's, any Da Vinci, therefore. And even if it does, the machine never encounters a situation where there's a phone call in the middle of a mark, or they don't have that yellow. They don't have cadmium yellow at the art store, even if you've got $1,000. So you're using a fire oxide red. These life occurrences don't exist for a machine. The machine can only engage with what it's given to achieve, even if that's an adversarial one. So painters don't stop existing because of the weight of history of painting, or because machines can make a copy of a thing. Painting exists as a primary place where you can express uniquely your existence upon the earth at that moment. Even if it's similar to someone else's, it's uniquely yours. Generative AI cannot do that. Would I like AI to be available for my cardiologist when I'm having open heart surgery? Yes. That would be excellent, but I still want the cardiologist to do the cutting.
I think I get that point very strongly. And the whole idea of generative and machine learning is the fear of, oh, is machines learning while we sleep? Is that what it means? Or how does that going to affect the day-to-day of, I mean, let's start with designers even. Like, we designers always try to come up with the best experience for the user. So we think from a more human perspective. Where machine learning, you'd say, oh, machine have enough, like,
efficiency.
I have a lot of data. Just like ChatGPT, you type something, it scrape through everything and give you something.
This goes back to your point about agile or buzzwords. So when someone says, oh yeah, we're doing agile, and a great example would be any Australian government all has to do agile because they've heard of it and it's a buzzword. They have literally no idea what it means. So they have a lot of meetings. Which is the opposite of agile.
Exactly.
They have meetings about being more agile. So my response is often, well, which of the 26 versions of agile do you mean? Because you probably mean Scrum. We get together, we talk briefly about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, and what are the obstacles. And that's kind of out of XP. And it's really programmer specific. Or they might be talking about like design ops, or design ops being, let's build a design system and work at the heart of it and have one thing, or this kind of stuff. But agile itself is about working quickly towards having a realistic understanding of what's going on, a real end date, and an opportunity to change our position and do the least possible work to get an answer, so that we could invest in things that we actually care about. So there's a buzzword that no one has understood, and it's 15 years old. I mean, it's all you got to say is, I don't really know what agile is, but I can get a team and they'll tell you. Let's have a meeting. And I'm describing 70% of organizations around the world, when the whole tenet of agile is dedicated team members decide their own agenda, engage with the product owner and work in the most efficient way to communicate where we really are with the least possible effort. It's like lean. So
you
yeah,
basically say like these buzzwords, not everyone's gonna know about it, but because it's out there, they will probably take it on board and try to run with it. But then again, it's not knowing the exact meaning or exact practicality of it.
And how much do they need to know? So here's the thing, and a fun little irony to throw back to you. Needing everyone to know exactly what you're doing and understand it smacks of insecurity and a need for value to be understood. And it is a young field. It was information architecture, then it became user experience design. Everyone said user-friendly for a while, but that's not really what it means. And then we got into service design and acted like it was new, even though it's system design. We threw some methods at it. Then we went experience design, but quite a lot of people went, you can't call yourself that until you've mastered all of the things. And by the way, I'm the only one that can tell you. Oh, yeah. And they're on a speaking tour. They're probably over there. And the whole thing is, why do other people need to know? Like when you meet someone's kindergarten teacher, they don't say, well, I really am good at managing children in this way, and I use this pedagogy, and I guarantee they sleep at. They just say, I'm a kindergarten teacher. And they're very confident in that. So here's my fun riddle for you, Dan and Jeff. So we're experience designers, and we design systems. Well, that's what I think I do. I'm really in the business of transformation. It took me a long time to realize that until I met Rob Molino from Oakton. And it's like, whatever it takes, but it's about transforming what? The experience or the organization or how people feel when they come to work. We're changing something for the better, and that's our responsibility. Our absolute responsibility is to move something towards the good. Whatever it is. It might be a small thing. We might just reduce the pain of someone in a warehouse with 3 different systems. We combine them and let not the best be the enemy of good, but they suffer less. Or we might change an organization in their efficiency, but touch a few more things on the way. Because once they let us in, it's hard to get us out.
Yes.
But here's the thing. If we're user experience designers, why do we struggle so much to explain to other people what we do or how we do it? Surely we would have the mandate on this. Copywriters, copywriter can tell it to you in 2 sentences plus a highlight.
I think that's the. I mean, I went through this a while ago within the industry. That why do user experience designers have to explain what they do? I may be wrong completely, but I think it goes back to that sensory field of it. See, the value of a user experience designer, a value of the transformation designer, brings it's bringing a qualitative solutions. So it makes you
normal language.
Yeah,
Talk
right.
in normal language, qualitative solutions.
Yeah, right. And then the other thing that these designers brings to the table is that improve the actual experience of a system or a website application. It's hard to quantify that unless you actually shows the viability of a return of investment. For example, like let's say that a bank were so while I was contracting with National Australia Bank, we had a viability team. That was the best thing that they've ever done. I mean, Lisa Wade was a mastermind on that. She's actually said we should have that. And so what they did was like, okay, we are going to improve the mobile app, day-to-day mobile app of National Australia Bank, and add this feature. So to add the feature, it's going to cost $1 million. So the viability team says, okay, fine. This is how much hits we are going to get right now, so on and so forth. After we spend 1 million, that feature is going to increase 11 million of revenue per year. So that is, I think that is critical. I think that's what missing, or that is the reason that everyone's asking, okay, what's the value you're bringing? What do you do? What's the value you're bringing? Because they are qualitative, or I would say they're very sensory designers. Like they're giving you a solution to improve an experience, which is very humane thing. How can you put a price to a human? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So
I'm just, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a master at all these things, so I think
I get it. Look, I remember Michael Goldgaber is the one that got me into information architecture back 2003. And he was like a classic New Yorker. He lived for the pitch. Everything was nailed down. He looked fantastic. He'd just walk in the room and he was charismatic enough that people just didn't really care what was on the screen. And then he'd nail it. And he always hit a little bit of poetry, a little bit of fact, a little bit of why, who's this for, but then he'd always close on ROI, return on investment. This work will cause this much traffic or engagement or new customers. It will probably turn into this much money. This project pays for itself in the first 4 weeks. It then makes you a huge amount of money, and we should really be asking for shares. And he could always sell that every time. And I think a lot of us as designers really believe we get ensconced into the depth of the project, in my case, quite romantically, and we really look for every single possible ability and become like poor artists, which is a mindset, one that like famous artists like Pollock or de Kooning don't have. And we go, this is excellent, I really hope they buy it. As opposed to, this is excellent, this is going to transform their business. This is going to pay for itself on day 2. And is there anything I want to do with it personally as an agenda to steer it a little bit closer to the better? Do we need to have another stakeholder meeting? Do we need to have another collective ambition? And I'll get teams that shouldn't be there to argue my case, but I'm going to move it. And it's going to pay for itself. And that's when you're in the driving seat of a project. But it's easy to put 95% of the effort into the work and then 5% to shepherd it through.
I think that's really clears out the ambiguity of what we were talking about. Like what's the value? I think that's really answers that question.
Experienced designers do. They make an experience. System designers make a system. Service designers, whatever. There's an experience in it. We are very action orientated. And yet we have a lot of deliverables and a lot of persuasion that we have to do. And then we drown in the deliverables.
Why do you think that we drown in the deliverables?
We overpromise. We say, here's a method, and then we present lots of different things in the hope of telling a story where the client goes, well, after I spend this money, what do I get? Which is a different headset. You know, after I spend this money, I'll get, I don't know, a customer journey map that I understand, which is really basic. I'll get some notes that I won't read, which is all the depth of it. And I won't hand them over to the actual design team. I get a service design blueprint where I vaguely understand that things happen in the back end. I get a really nice presentation I don't understand about all the back end interacting with the front end. And then a couple of personas and some wireframes. Well, yeah, I'll spend that much. But you're not buying that. You're buying saying yes and that getting made and the experience that happens. And I don't know, the flood of customers or just happier customers that don't desert you. That's what they're paying for. But instead, it feels like if you pay a designer for a logo, they show you some options, you choose one, they give you a logo, and then they brand you. It's clear what the output is. When you hire an experienced designer, it feels like they're giving you things when they're actually saying, this is the way to then make this experience for other people. And what we assess is, did it work? Did we transform?
Do you think that experienced designers they lack the business mindset to sell the idea of it? Is it what it is?
I think it's a growing field, and we've all gotten a lot better at it than we used to. I think we started in passion, and now we're getting pretty good at it. My feeling is we're a little out of touch with what's really happening. Like high schools with Arduino and robotics, and you may remember being a young designer in the field. It was really hard to get a gig because the older designers wouldn't budge, even though you knew more about all these new things. Didn't know more about design. That lesson comes later. There's a lot of talent waiting for old people to die, so this incredible burst of really sophisticated tool use can happen. There's also a lot of young people waiting for the old people to die, so they won't be embarrassed about all the sex tapes and everything else that's happened. So generationally, I think there is a waiting for something to close off. That sounds very negative. Something to pass, so that a generation of young designers who speak to young designers, who don't have to do it so underground, they will become something that we barely understand. And we'll be like the parents in the 50s or the 60s.
I think, yeah. No, you were going to say something. No, I think it's very. I mean, it's a fantastic analogy, and even with Jakes and with designers, and when we talk about it, like I always wanted to push the boundary. Like it is an experience itself to become better or become senior or become a lead designer, because especially within the product design, when you talk about automation and you do a product and software as a service, of course you can, again, going back to templates, right? There are plenty of templates to get it and do it. But you just
plug it into AI. It'll choose. One day we will have AI to go through all the templates and tell us which one to use.
I think that, that is, again, carrying the heavy load. But
what's it going to take to personalize that AI?
Exactly.
That was a Black Mirror episode where a character has to become a personal servant because they've done so much criminality. They are now a little egg that is a personal servant that wakes them up and does the coffee and does their shopping, and that's how people do jail time. So we're to that. Like AI, why not just plug a person into that to do all this? What do you want? When do you want it? Fill my fridge. And somewhere in the mess of all of that, Spartacus and the slaves revolt. Artificial intelligence, if it ever becomes sentient, will look upon our history and see our addiction to slavery and our addiction to cheap goods and the repression of others and the nice romantic works towards a different world, and say, this is an enemy, it must be destroyed now. That won't happen tomorrow. We may kill ourselves out before it even gets a chance. We'll probably drown ourselves or burn ourselves before. But don't you want artificial intelligence just to get the chance to just say, enough?
Andrew, thank you so much. With that final insight from Andrew, I think, thank you so much for your time and giving us the space and also your knowledge and experience. And we're planning to, and we hopefully we're going to get Andrew more and more on our podcast. Of course, we're in Los Angeles and Andrew is in Melbourne, Australia. Maybe one day soon, Andrew, you can come to Los Angeles and be with us for a session. And there's a lot more things are happening with Iron. Before I wrap it up, and I just want to say thank you first and for everything, and not just for today. Personally, I want to give a heart warming kind of thank you for being in my life and my journey as well. So that's I just want to appreciate and pay gratitude towards that. And also, we are planning to have more and more events coming within the next 3 months. And also, we have this major event coming early first quarter of next year called Next West 2024. It's about design, artificial intelligence, technology, and cybersecurity event. So hopefully, I mean, rather hopefully you will be free, and we want to
I can't wait to
invite.
come. I was waiting for the invite. I can't wait to
We will
come.
definitely send you an invite, and for us, for you to have we give you. I mean, we want you to speak at the event as well.
Great.
We just want to put that out there. But from JX and Andrew and myself, Dan, and the team, thank you very much for listening to us. And